So let's learn about Mahatma Gandhi's views. Mahatma Gandhi advocated for education in vernacular languages. He also made the distinction between literacy and education. Now, what Mahatma Gandhi thought at that point of time was that English, the British people, was swaying us away from their education system. He thought that by this way of teaching in English language, they were making us distance from our own language. They were making us away from our own culture and from our own language and from our own tradition. He also thought that this was Britishers' way of enforcing their culture upon us and swaying us away from their culture and charming us into the European way, so that the students who were studying at that point of time would not realize or understand our own culture. Rather, they would be swayed away by the European culture. So he thought that teaching in vernacular language was very, very important, and that is why he also emphasized that vernacular language would also bring us the sense of glory, the sense of dignity that we had in our past. It would bring us it would help us realize the importance of our history, of our past, and it would help us rise from dignity and grow towards the freedom struggle. He also thought that British, they wanted to derogate us. It was derogatory. They wanted to make us feel that we were inferior to them. Our education system was inferior to theirs, and that is why he vehemently opposed the British system. That is why he also made the distinction between the literacy and education. So by literacy and education, he made a very, very sharp distinction. That is, he said that literacy, it could be brought about by anyone who learns to speak a language can be literate. So he thought that literacy did not have the core ideas of education. That means that literacy does not means that the person is also educated. Literacy just means knowing a language. So that was not enough for the people. Education, rather, it also included every other thing that is there. That is, he wanted the students, he wanted young people to realize the importance of doing productive work, such as doing day-to-day works, understanding how the things work, how the basic things work, learning a craft and making productive use of that craft every day. So he thought that not just textbook way of education system was progressive. He thought that the real education system also promoted the importance of craft and knowing how the things work, being productive in day-to-day activities. So that is how he vehemently opposed the English system, which he thought was based on textbook and which was trying to make us feel inferior to that system and make us feel derogatory and to charm us away into their own system, so that the people would be only interested in the European ways of living and thinking. And that is why he also urged the students to leave the British education institutions towards the freedom struggle. He also said that we should boycott these institutions because they were teaching us something which was not related to our culture and which did not teach us how we should be dignified at our past. We should see our past as glory period, as a glorified period. Next is Rabindranath Tagore's views. Tagore believed in self-learning outside the regimental system. In 1901, he established an experimental school called Shantiniketan. That is also means abode of peace. So Rabindranath Tagore, he was forced to go into school, the British school, in his early years, and he thought that that system engaged him, that made him feel isolated, that made him feel less interested towards the education, towards studying. So he thought that engaging students into a regimental system, into an enclosed boundary would not help the students to form their creativity, to grow their creative insight. So that is why he thought that learning in an open environment, learning close to nature, learning things that were important from both the sides. Now we should always remember that where Mahatma Gandhi opposed entirely the Western sense of education, the British system of education, Rabindranath Tagore did not oppose it entirely. He rejected the infrastructure, he rejected the educational regimentary system, but he did not oppose the things that were being taught. So he thought that with those things, it was important that we also study our Indian culture. We should also study our Indian texts. So he kind of mixed both the things. He was in favor of learning scientific and technological advancements. So he also introduced that along with the Indian texts that used to get taught in Shantiniketan. He thought that engaging children in some kind of building or something would inhibit their creativity process. So that is why Shantiniketan was established in a very open area where children and students, they used to be taught in a very open area, like we can see here in the picture. They are being taught in an open garden kind of area, and they are sitting on the ground, and the teacher is teaching. So that is why he thought that this could enhance the creativity in the students. But he was not entirely opposed to the Western system of education. Rather, he supported a mixed form, that is, we should learn about science and technology as well. Sir Aurobindo Ghosh's views. Ghosh believed that national education should awaken the spirit of nationality among students. He believed in blending traditional education with Western education and stressed the importance of learning useful crafts for employment. So Ghosh's view had everything in his view. So he also encouraged Mahatma Gandhi's view when he said that nationalism, a sense of nationalism, was important in being taught to the students. He also included Rabindranath's views, that was we should also encourage the Western education. After all, education is education. We cannot entirely distinguish all kinds of education. The scientific technology, the scientific advancements, science and technology is also important for the Indian people, as well as those texts that were already there in the Indian ancient texts. And apart from that, he also held his belief towards learning useful crafts for employment. So he encircled all the 3 points that were being taught. He encircled everything that could have been taught in an education system. He included the Indian text, which could make the students feel dignified for their own culture, their own history, their own language. He also promoted this vernacular language thing, but he did not oppose the English language as well. He thought that we should also learn English language, and we should also learn about the Western education system as well. And we should also learn about the crafts, that could help us, attaining employment. So he basically encircled all the aspects of education that could have, prevailed in some or the other's minds. He did not oppose any way. He said that everything is important, and so we should not, overlook something over the other, and we should try and learn everything. We should incorporate all the major things in our education system. So he was also one of the pioneers who suggested that there should be, a national education system, which could happen in this way. Now, a national education. Gandhiji was highly critical of Western civilization and its worship of machines and technology. Tagore wanted to combine elements of modern Western civilization with the best of Indian tradition. The debate about national education continued till after independence. So, we should know that where Gandhiji was severely against the Western kind of education, Tagore, he was not against, he did not vehemently oppose the Western education. Rather, he and Aurobindo Ghosh said that we should take the best advantage of what Western education has to offer to us. So rather than, ignoring the education system of the West completely, we should learn about our Indian tradition, the best of our Indian tradition, as well as the best of the European tradition that they can offer us to learn. So he combined both the best aspects. National education debate is still going on. It's not just continued after independence. It is also there in today's world. Like we can see national education policy, being passed in 2020. We all know that what is the best way to, educating students should always be a debate, because, with the modern society, we could always, progress in a better way. Sticking to a same method for years, for generations is, it can be, it can be monotonous. It can be monotonous to a student, or it can be, it can take us to, rather than progression, it can take us to regression. It cannot, it can take us to demotion. Because with the society, with the modern era, with the era that is continuously advancing towards something, new the other day, we should also, look for a better thing every day. So a better system of education would not hurt. And it is not the debate about national education should always continue, in my opinion. Of course, it's my opinion. There can be different opinion of different people. Let's come to the questions. Question 1 is match the following. William Jones had great respect for the ancient cultures, so we'll go with this. Rabindranath Tagore, he said that we should learn in a natural environment. Thomas Macaulay, he was one second. Promotion of English education. This is Thomas Macaulay. Mahatma Gandhi was very critical of the English education, and Pathshalas meant gurus. Hope this was very easy for you. As we all knew, we learned that William Jones was he had a deep respect for Indian as well as the Western ancient text. He had a deep respect for understanding all the languages. He was a linguist, of course. Rabindranath Tagore, as he was bounded in a educational environment, he wanted to make learning possible in a natural environment. Thomas Macaulay, he wanted to promote the English education, and he was vehemently opposed to the Indian way of education. Mahatma Gandhi, he was very critical of the English education as opposed to Thomas Macaulay. He thought that English education was just to make us feel inferior and to sway away in the charms of the Englishmen. Pathshalas, they had gurus as the teachers. So there, this ends our first question. Now question 2 is, why did William Jones feel the need to study Indian history, philosophy and law? William Jones was a great scholar who had deep respect for the Western and Indian cultural system, and he, along with the other scholars, also went on to establish Asiatic society. He believed that through their own cultural way, through their own native language, the vernacular language, the people can be taught about things easier in an easier way. People can be taught about the things in their own language, the things that they have been learning in a very easier way, rather than forcing something which is entirely foreign to them, which could be not that useful for them, might distance the people from the government. So that is why he thought that there was a need to study Indian history, philosophy and law in order to know the people they were living amongst better, and in order to govern them better, in order to be propagator of something that they were living in that country. And they were in order to do that, he also studied everything. He studied the Muslim text, he studied the Hindu text, he studied the ancient Indian texts that were there, and then he came to this conclusion. So we cannot say that he blindly followed into that path. He believed that Indians could be taught things in their way that could be turned out to be better way. So that is what he thought. Moving on. Let's move on to the next question. The next question is, why did James Mill and Thomas Macaulay think that European education was essential in India? James Mill and Thomas Macaulay were vehement opposers of the Oriental way of the education system. They thought that rather than teaching the people what they want to be taught, and rather than teaching in their own vernacular language to win their hearts, it was more important to bring a scientific and practical approach in them, which according to them their ancient texts lack. So according to them, the Asian text, the Asian literature, the Asian education lacked a sense of practicality and science and technology that was supposed to be there in an education system. So rather than pleasing the people with their own language and to teach what they wanted to be taught, they should be teaching something which could be beneficial to them, which was in European sense, the European way was far better than the Indian way or the Asian way, because European way promised a practical experience of an education system with science and technology. According to them, it promised more progressive approach rather than Indian way, which lacked this science and technology thing, which lacked practicality and which were mere ideas which could not be followed. Also, they thought that Asian way or the Indian way lacked teaching people about morality, commitment and loyalty. So that was another reason why they thought that European education was more important. They held European education in a high sense of superiority in comparison with the Indian education that time. Question 4 is, why did Mahatma Gandhi want to teach children handicraft? So the reason why Mahatma Gandhi wanted to teach children handicraft was that because handicraft would mean more productive things for children. He thought that rather than teaching them something which is coming straight out from textbook, it would be more practical to teach them something which could help them in day-to-day stuff. So he encouraged children and students to learn how things work, to learn how basic things work, like basic machines or basic things that were used in everyday society. He also encouraged a way of craft that people could practice every day, and they could make something, their lives could get more productive if they have some craft skills along with the education that they are being provided. So that is why he thought that if children could learn handicrafts, they would have an extra knowledge and extra skill set, which would obviously help them in the education, in a better way of learning. To move on to question 5, why did Mahatma Gandhi think that English education had enslaved Indian? So he thought that Britishers, they were enforcing their education system because they thought that theirs was education system was superior, and they wanted to make Indians feel inferior due to their education system. The education system that was prevailing in India, they thought, Britishers thought that they had an inferior way of teaching people. So there was one reason. The another reason was that he thought that Europeans, while trying to impart their education, their way of education, they wanted to sway away the individuals. They wanted to sway away the Indians to their way of living, to the European culture, the European lifestyle. And therefore, the Indians would not realize the importance of their historical, their ancient texts, and their sense of dignity in their past heroes. So that is why he also thought that English education has enslaved Indian to, make them think into the Western way of thinking, not with what Indian ancient texts had been teaching us for a very long time. He also thought that English just wanted to enforce English language on the people of India, and they wanted to make Indians forget about their own culture, their own language, and their own lifestyle, which was there before the Britishers came.